Hello and welcome to another Magic Duels gameplay. Today we're taking a look at a blue-white flash deck that can both play the roles of a tempo deck or be a more controlling, late game oriented deck. So let's take a look at the entire deck here, starting out with Prophet of Distortion, which is a pretty peculiar inclusion, but the reason we're playing it is that it's a 1-drop that can crew our Smuggler's Copter, and in the late game we can also activate it to draw a card for 3 and a colorless, and since we are a deck with lots of instant speed interaction, having this activated ability be in play is pretty useful since we can either activate this or use other instants. Next up we've got 1 copy of Fragmentize just to deal with opposing Smugglers, Copters and other artifacts that see a ton of play. Can also kill a Sphinx's Tutelage if we encounter that kind of deck. We've got a Selfless Spirit, which is part of our Spirit package, which is just also a very solid creature. 2/1 flying for 2 mana that we can sacrifice to make our creatures indestructible until end of turn is a very useful ability and a very powerful creature. We also have a Dauntless River Marshal, which is another nice tempo creature. For 2 mana most of the time this will be a 3/2 that can also use the activated ability to tap down a creature, so again having these activated abilities is quite useful. We also have a Rattlechains, another Spirit, 2/1 flying flash. When he comes down can give a Spirit hexproof until end of turn, and we can play our Spirits as though they had flash, which is relevant for our Selfless Spirit. Then Smuggler's Copter, I already alluded to it. 2 mana for a 3/3 flyer that gets to loot and only accrue 1, so any creature with a power will be able to crew the Copter. We have 2 copies of Blast Alliance as a versatile removal spell that can either also gain us 4 life, untap some of our creatures, or make the opponent sacrifice an attacking creature, which is the mode we'll use most often. 2 copies of Telling Time to smooth out our draws a little bit. We've got Spell Quellers, which are great at playing a tempo game but also a more controlling game, countering one of the opponent's spells, putting a 2/3 flyer in play. Combines well with our Spirit theme since we can protect him with our Rattlechains, so just a great card in this deck. And we also have a Reflector Mage, which also plays a nice tempo game, bouncing an opposing creature, and the opponent can't replay it on the following turn. We have Skywhaler's Shot as another of our removal spells, 3 mana to kill a creature with power 3 or greater, and scry 1 is a pretty awesome deal and one we're happy to play 3 copies of. We've got another counter spell here in Scatter to the Winds, which for 3 mana counters a spell, but we can also awaken it, which in this kind of deck we will do more often than in other kinds of decks, since we do appreciate having an additional 3/3 creature, and if we are playing a more aggressive kind of game, then having that additional creature is quite useful. We also have Gisela the Broken Blade, which is great if she doesn't get answered right away. 4 mana for a 4/3 flying first strike lifelink, and if we can protect her with counterspells or with Selfless Spirits, then she's gonna be great, and also transforms into Gisela if we also have Bruna, and we do have 1 copy of Bruna in the deck to combine with Gisela and other angels, so we might actually see a Gisela at some point. Gideon, Ally of Zendikar, just a great card to apply pressure, and if we are more on the defensive side we can still pump out a bunch of 2/2 tokens, so just a great card. We also have Archangel Avacyn, which goes nicely with our instant speed flash game, but also just an excellent creature by her own merits, and transforms into Avacyn the Purifier when she gets angry. Also a nice combo with the Selfless Spirit, since we can sacrifice it to trigger Avacyn transforming or to save our creatures from Avacyn transforming and maybe killing our own creatures. We have 1 copy of Tragic Arrogance as a kind of sweeper that can also deal with other card types. If the opponent has lots of planeswalkers or lots of enchantments, this can help. If they're playing artifact creatures, then this is quite nice since we can choose the artifact creature as both the artifact and the creature, and they only get to keep that one. So pretty versatile kind of card that can help us out of sticky situations. We've got Jace, Unraveler of Secrets to draw some extra cards or bounce opposing creatures. We've got Linvala the Preserver, which can be very useful when we're behind on board, since she gets us either 5 life or an Angel token, or maybe even both. And also just a 5/5 flyer, which is not bad. Torrential Gearhulk, which is another flash creature for 6 mana, 5/6, that lets us play an instant from our graveyard for free, and we do have a decent amount of instants, including counter spells and removal spells. And then finally 1 copy of Bruna, the Fading Light, that can get back an angel or human from our graveyard. We've got quite a few of those. And then Flying Vigilance 5/7, so holds down the fort quite nicely. And if we can return a Gisela, then we get to live the dream of transforming into Brisella, Voice of Nightmares. Then the mana base, 7 plains, 6 islands, 1 wastes, which we can fetch up with Evolving Wilds to activate our Prophet of Distortion, 2 Prairie Stream, 2 Glacial Fortress, 3 Aether Hub, which is both a colorless land for the Prophet of Distortion and also a land that comes into play untapped and makes any color of mana, which is quite useful. And then 4 Evolving Wilds, which can get both island, plains and wastes. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which looks acceptable. We've got 2 telling times to help us out a bit, and having a Copter in your opener is always a good reason to keep. So sure, let's play a Glacial Fortress tapped. And then turn 2, most likely gonna play the Copter. Although if we do miss on a land here, I could see an argument for just playing Telling Time. This is interesting. So Evolving Wilds combines nicely with Telling Time, since we can shuffle away if we don't like the card we left on top. So I'm kind of inclined to still run out to Copter. And then best case scenario, our opponent plays a creature we want to Reflector Mage and we draw an untapped land. Otherwise we're just gonna Telling Time and use Evolving Wilds to shuffle. Opponent on red black, and we drew Scatter to the Winds. Alright, so I think we say go here, and then end of turn Telling Time, and then sacrifice Evolving Wilds. Alright, Mardu colors, and a Cultivator's Caravan, which is not bad. So let's Telling Time here. So our opponent could be on a Mardu kind of vehicles deck. We find lots of lands here, and yeah, I'll take an island and then put Aether Hub on top, and then we can shuffle away the land since I don't think we need an additional land. And yeah, sure, let's get a wastes. So we have our colorless mana. And let's see what we draw into now. Another Copter, alright, so we do need creatures at some point. Could just run out a Reflector Mage here, which can crew the Copter, which, I mean, it's not bad. Although we don't get full value from our Reflector Mage, but I think that's still fine here. Getting in for 3, maybe looting away our second Copter if we don't find more creatures. And next turn we might be able to land a Jace. Alright, land is good. So either discarding Telling Time or Smuggler's Copter here. Think I'll go with the Telling Time since our opponent might have removal for our first Copter. And our hand looks pretty good here. Since next turn we can either go Copter, keep up Scatter, or play a Jace. Opponent has access to 5 mana now. And they have a pretty good play here in Veteran Motorist, which can crew the Caravan and hit us for 6, which is a lot. And playing Jace to bounce the Motorist is not great since they get to scry 2 again. So we do need some sort of removal spell here. Dauntless River Marshal's interesting. So we can play the River Marshal, keep up Scatter, which I don't hate. And we can crew our Copter with the River Marshal. And let's see, I think we do attack with the Reflector Mage, given that otherwise our opponent just crews a caravan and is not gonna attack with the Motorist anyways. So might as well get in 2 points. And Skywhaler's shot is excellent, just what we needed. And I think we actually, let's see, either discard Copter or Jace here. And I'm inclined to discard a Copter, since we don't have a ton of creatures at the moment. And we'll keep up Skywhaler's shot and Scatter here. For opponent crews the caravan, we can shoot it. And their opponent with a Pianalar. Alright, I think we can let that happen. And let's see if our opponent goes to crew the caravan. And they decide to crew it with the Motorist instead of the summoning sick Pia. Let it attack first, so it's tapped and can't be used for mana, and then try and kill it with our shot. And the opponent's gonna sacrifice it with Pianalar to deny us the Scry 1, since now our Skywhaler's shot fizzled. But that does mean they don't get to play 2-drop here if they had one. Alright, Blessed Alliance is interesting. So we can keep up Blessed Alliance Scatter, or we can just go with Jace. Could even bounce the Thopter to get rid of it. So I don't hate crewing the Copter with our River Marshal. And hit for 3 in the skies. See what we can find. Gideon, alright. I'm in for Gideon. Now what do we discard? I think Blessed Alliance is probably our worst card here, since our opponent does have some tokens, which makes the Blessed Alliance worse. And I think I'm okay with tapping out for a Gideon here. Alright, opponent chumps with their token. Don't mind that. And yeah, let's play Gideon and make a 2/2 token. And say go. So now the name of the game is Protect Gideon. Vehicles here like Fleet Wheel Cruiser could do some damage, but we do have 2 blockers at the moment. Instead they have a Depala, which is gonna pump all the dwarves and all the crewed vehicles. Can also give some card advantage. And a reason our opponent is playing black most likely is for unlicensed disintegration. So if they keep up 3 mana, well, there we go. They're gonna play it right now to kill our Reflector Mage. And let's see who they attack here. If it's us or Gideon, they just go for us. And I'll just trade with the Motorist here. And Evolving Wild's a draw. So a few options here. We can make a token, use that to crew our Copter. Maybe bounce the Pala, attack for 5. That puts us in a pretty good position. Could even attack and offer the trade for the Pala. If our opponent accepts, that's fine. If not, we still bounce the Pala with Jace. Could also just plus Gideon to attack for 5. Puts the most pressure on our opponent, but doesn't develop our board and doesn't give us an easy way to crew the Copter. So I think I like making a 2-2 here. Crewing the Copter. Attack for 6. And then most likely play Jace. Although Reflector Mage is pretty good as well. So let's see if they trade. They do. That's fine. So now we can actually just play Jace and take up to draw a card. Could have played Reflector Mage on Pia, but I don't want to give him an extra token in a few turns. And Aether Hub is interesting, would let us play Reflector Mage and Scatter next turn, but I think I want some action. Glacial Fortress, I guess we'll just play here and say go. So now we have 2 Planeswalkers in play, we're at 12, opponent only has 1 creature in play. So it's looking pretty good here, and our opponent agrees. So Smuggler's Copter doing a number on our opponent. The Skywhaler shot also being pretty important to deal with the caravan in time. And now our opponent has to choose which Planeswalker to attack. They go with a Jace. But now they're in a lot of trouble since, let's see, we can activate Gideon, that's 5. So if we play Reflector Mage to crew our Smuggler's Copter, keep up Scatter to the Winds, then we should be able to close out the game here. So let's hit for 10. Opponent has an unlicensed disintegration for the Copter. Let's try and counter this. And attack for 10. Alright, sweet. On to the next. Well, they also have a Harness Lightning apparently, so they get to live for another turn. Let's plus, put that on the bottom. We don't have the Copter anymore, so aren't really incentivized to keep lands in hand at the moment. Opponent can't replay the Pia. Let's plus here just in case. Island on the bottom. Alright, Prophet of Distortion would draw us a lot of cards here. Plus Gideon. Attack for 9. And this should do it. Alright, on to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which is pretty interesting here. So, lots of 3-drops, but 2 Spell Quellers. If we were on the play, this hand would be a lot better, but I think it's still keepable, and hopefully we can draw a 2-drop in the first 2 turns. Up against Mountain, so this could be bad if our opponent's on a more aggressive deck. And let's get a Waste Seer actually, I think. This does cut us off double blue for a potential counterspell, but given that we have 2 Spell Quellers, I'm not too worried about not having mana up for Scatter to the Winds. Alright, no 2-drop is good for us. Alright, there's a second island, so now we've got all our colors. Aether Hub. And alright, so their opponent's on a heavy energy deck with Aether Torch Renegade. Can ping a creature or deal 6 to a player. Not too worried about him. So now we can just keep up Spell Queller. Question is, if our opponent doesn't play anything, do we still run out a 2-3 Spell Queller? And maybe we do, but this makes it a bit easier. So we'll counter the Thriving Rhino here. Even though we could have eventually killed the Rhino with Skywhaler's shot, this is just more mana efficient. And we can start applying some pressure here. Copter's not bad, but I think we wait one more turn before we play him, since now we can still keep up Spell Queller. And then next turn we can both play a 2-drop and a 3-drop, like either Spell Queller or Skywhaler's shot. So if our opponent plays a large creature like Lathnu Hellion, we can just kill it with Skywhaler's shot. In Nature's Way, well, this is just perfect. So opponent wants to use the Hellion to kill our creature. Let's see, Reflector Mage. I think we want to keep on top with the Scry one from the shot. So yeah, our opponent tried to use Nature's Way to kill our Spell Queller, but we killed their creature in response. So we got a nice 2-for-1. Opponent still did get 2 energy from their creature, but not too worried about it. And they can attack us for 1, which is fine. And on our turn, we probably just play out a Copter, keep up Spell Queller. Don't think we need to use Reflector Mage on the Renegade quite yet. So let's make sure we can keep up blue mana here. So this seems fine. Attack for 2. And say go. Might have even been better to represent double blue here instead of keeping up the wastes, since there's not a ton of instants for colorless mana. So here we could actually just ambush the Renegade, but I don't think I care enough about the Renegade to run out the Spell Queller here. Opponent could also have instant speed removal. And I think I'll just not play the Spell Queller. We're not in a hurry, we're still at 18, opponent doesn't have any pressure, and we have a pretty good hand here, so I don't feel inclined to just run out the Spell Queller. So here we've got an interesting decision. We can run out Reflector Mage bouncing the Renegade, although in a few turns our opponent will get additional energy by replaying the Renegade. Or we can just crew the Copter with the Spell Queller, which I actually don't hate. If our opponent tries to kill the Copter, we can use our second Spell Queller. So attack for 3, get to draw and discard. And River Marshal's not bad. Let's see, we've got 5 lands. I don't think we'll need the plains. And now we can run out the River Marshal and still keep up Spell Queller. As well as the River Marshal's activated ability. If our opponent just plays a creature we don't care about, we can tap it down. Opponent does attack with the Renegade, which is interesting. I think I'll block here. And let's see what kind of... Alright, they have a combat trick. I think I just let this happen. I don't care too much about the River Marshal. And we even found a second one. So here we can run out a River Marshal. Crew the Copter with the River Marshal and attack for 5 in the skies. And Selfless Spirit is not bad, but I think all the cards in our hand are better. Even though having a Selfless Spirit to protect the Spell Quellers would have been pretty nice. I think we won't need the Selfless Spirit here. Alright, Bristling Hydra, I don't mind using our Spell Queller on, since it's a creature that can get hexproof, which is very hard for us to deal with otherwise. And our opponent has a lot of energy in store. And now let's see, we've got enough mana to play Reflector Mage, bouncing the Renegade. We can crew our Copter with the Reflector Mage. Could have even used the River Marshal's ability to tap down the Renegade, but this is fine. Attack with everyone. Sure, why not? And I guess we keep Linvala, but doesn't matter. Alright, sweet. On to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which looks pretty good. We've got a lot of 2-drops. Prophet for the late game. So this Evolving Wild's gonna get an island, most likely. Yep. Does mean we don't get a wastes for the Prophet, but I'm sure we can find an Aether Hub at some point. Turn 2 here, between River Marshal and Selfless Spirit. Not sure which one. Opponent on blue-green. And Skywhaler's shot. I think we go with the River Marshal here. If our opponent doesn't have a creature, then this gets in for the most damage. You can also run out a Selfless Spirit main phase 1. If our opponent does have a blocker that would trade with the River Marshal. But looks like the opponent doesn't have any creatures yet. Blue-green does have a lot of flash creatures at instant speed, so I think I will run out a Selfless Spirit right now, and then attack with the River Marshal. If our opponent has the... Alright, they have a Bounding Crisis, so they're probably gonna tap down our River Marshal, which is fine. If they had the 2/4 flash Eldrazi and we attacked, that would have been pretty bad, since we would have to sacrifice Selfless Spirit to save the River Marshal. Instead it's a 3/3, but it will tap down our creature for a turn. So we'll take 3 to 17, and we would like a land here, so we can play Skywhaler's shot or Spell Queller. Instead Rattlechains. Alright. Opponent with another Bounding Crisis. Tap down the River Marshal. So I think we attack, given that we're not blocking with the spirits. This isn't a race we're currently winning, but if we find a land for a Skywhaler's shot, we could be in decent shape. Gisela also great. Blue-green doesn't have a ton of removal usually. So we'll take 6 down to 11. Next turn we can keep back the River Marshal. And there's an Aether Hub, excellent. So we'll attack for 4 in the skies. And keep back our River Marshal. Can also sacrifice spirits to make it indestructible so we can trade. But yeah, I'll just say go here. Opponent has Unsubstantiate end of turn. So I think we will use this opportunity to cast Skywhaler's shot on one of the lizard fish creatures. Could have Blossoming Defense to give it hexproof, but doesn't look like it, and keep this on top. So the River Marshal gets returned to our hand, but we will only take 3 this turn. Could have used Spell Queller to counter it. but I think using this opportunity to kill a Krasis is pretty good. Opponent still keeping up mana. So they could have counter spells as well. Think we try and cast River Marshal here. Use some of that colorless mana since we don't need it. See if this resolves before we decide if we want to attack or not. It does. Alright, I think I'll attack with both flyers here. That works. And let's play out a Prophet. And say go. Another bounce spell perhaps, or another flash creature here end of turn. It's gonna be another Bounding Krasis, alright, that's the last one. Taps down River Marshal. And I think I'm okay with chump blocking with the Prophet here. If our opponent does attack, that is. Since we are getting kind of low and we have lots of resources in hand that we would like to use. Alright, another land is nice. So we can attack for 7. Could also try and resolve Gisela. So I think I want to see if Gisela resolves before deciding if we attack or not. That works. So now I think we only attack with 1 spirit. Or we could actually attack with the Selfless Spirit, since we might end up sacrificing it. This leaves back enough blockers that even if our opponent goes bounce spell, end of turn, untap bounce spell, we don't die. Since our hand is pretty good here. And if we can get a hit in with Gisela, then I feel a lot better. So end of turn, nothing. Alright, so the opponent might just be stuck on 3 lands with expensive cards in hand. Evolving Wilds, maybe they're more than just 2 colors. No attacks, so Gisela successfully holding back the opponent's creatures. And now with Spell Queller protection, it's pretty safe to attack with all our flyers. First strike damage happens, and there we go. On to the next one. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which looks decent. We've got a Gideon, do need double white, but we do have a Skywhaler shot to bridge the gap and hopefully buy us some time. And Prophet is nice, can play that turn 1. And maybe chip in for a few points of damage. Our best draw here is probably Smuggler's Copter, but that's often the case. Opponent with an Aether Theorist, so 1/3 that lets them scry if they pay an energy. Aether Hub's not bad, gives us access to double white for Gideon. So no attacks here, but at least our Prophet keeps back their Theorist. It's an intellectual fight here. Alright, opponent with Imperial Voyager, which we unfortunately can't kill with our Skywhaler shot. And is another source for the opponent to get energy. We found a Rattlechains. The Voyager is going to hit us for 2 and make 2 energy, but we can flash in a Rattlechains end of turn. And next turn we get to play Gideon. Opponent with a Bristling Hydra, with enough energy to give it hexproof in response to the energy trigger here if we want to use our Skywhaler's shot. So I think we just have to play out our Rattlechains. And there's Scatter, a turn too late. So playing Gideon isn't even that great here, but I think we still go for it. Could start activating Prophet to maybe dig into a Tragic Arrogance, or to find more lands until we can resolve Bruna. But I think just playing Gideon, making a token is fine here. Could also make an emblem, so our Rattlechains can trade for the Voyager, which was also reasonable. But given that we're not blocking with the Rattlechains, might as well attack. And the plan here is to chump the Hydra with the token. At least if the Voyager attacks Gideon, they won't get any energy from it. Also note that the opponent has a Rogue's Passage in play, so they can make their Hydra unblockable, which is pretty scary. So we'll chump the Hydra, Gideon takes 2. Still haven't found a target for Fragmentize. A land is interesting, so I think we actually plus Gideon here and go on the beatdown plan. Hit for 7. And say go. And the plan is to block the Hydra with a Prophet and draw a card. If our opponent attacks with everyone, then things get a bit interesting. Since then we can't save Gideon even if we chump the Hydra. And that's what happens here. So I guess we can block the Theorist. But yeah, Gideon's dead. If our opponent doesn't play anything we want to counter, we can draw a card. A Reflector Mage, alright. And River Marshal, so had we found another land, we could have gone Reflector Mage on the Hydra. If our opponent gives it hexproof, we can respond with Skywhaler's shot. That's not what happened, but can still play out a River Marshal. So I think we attack for 2 in the air, since our opponent can animate the Lumbering Falls to block our Prophet. And then we run out River Marshal, keep up Scatter and Skywhaler's shot. Jace for Prology is fine, since our opponent still hasn't gotten any cards in their graveyard, so it's not close to transforming. And they are going to activate their Lumbering Falls, which we cannot target with Skywhaler's shot. But we can trade with River Marshal if we want to. Which I think I'll do. So unfortunately didn't get to spend our mana usefully here. Opponent also staying back with the Voyager. Still haven't found a land, so still can't go Mage plus shot. I guess we can Reflector Mage the Voyager, get in for 2 in the air, play Selfless Spirit and try and kill with our flyers, which also sounds reasonable. Attack for 2, and we can actually play this at instant speed thanks to Rattlechains, so no need to run it out quite yet. Jace gets activated. Hydra tries to get in there. So, given that they have this Rogue's Passage, I'm kind of nervous of just letting this through, so I think I'll chump with our Prophet. Could have also chumped with Reflector Mage, but I don't think we'll be spending 4 mana to draw a card anymore. And end of turn, play Selfless Spirit. Alright, there's a Plains. So we get to hit for 4 in the skies. We get to unsubstantiate on the Selfless Spirit. I think we have to let this happen. Only hit for 2. And Essence Flux. Alright, blinks the Hydra. So, yeah, not much we want to do about that. Opponent gets more energy. Now we just say go, and the plan is to scatter the Imperial Voyager, so our opponent can't block our flyers. Now Jace is going to transform here though, which is annoying. But I think we have to scatter this. And I don't think we want to awaken, since we need our mana. And let's see if Jace transforms here. He can plus on one of our spirits. Reclamation Sage, alright. We don't have any targets, luckily. Does the Hydra attack? It does. I don't think we block, given that we have a clean attack with Reflector Mage. Opponent uses the ability once to get in for an additional damage. Jace flips. We drop all the way to 7. But they actually used all their energy to pump the Hydra. So now we can just kill it with Skywhaler shot. Or bounce it with Reflector Mage. So even if they didn't spend all their energy, we could have forced the issue by playing Reflector Mage and then responding with Skywhaler shot when they go to give it hexproof. So I think we just Reflector Mage the Reclamation Sage. Let's see, opponent has Unsubstantiate and Essence Flux in their graveyard that they can get back with Jace. So not a big deal, can just kill the Hydra. Spell Queller. Yeah, that seems decent. And now we get to attack our opponent for 4. And we're in a pretty good position. So our Gideon bought us a lot of time. And then our flyers managed to fly over for the win. Opponent pluses on Reflector Mage. Smuggler's Copter, so finally a target for Fragmentize. So we can Fragmentize the Copter and attack with our flyers. And that's gonna do it. Alright, sweet. I wanna thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this gameplay, and as always, have a nice day. Sacrifice Selfless Spirit to trigger Avacyn. Use our Prophet to draw a card. And Avacyn is gonna wipe the board. We'll block if our opponent has a Languish. We have Scatter Up. Instead it's a Planar Outburst. Now we get to play out Reflector Mage. Crew the Copter. Attack for 9. Discard Evolving Wilds. And no real need here to overextend. Tragic Arrogance. Alright. Get to keep Copter and Reflector Mage. And now we get to play out one of our Angels. Crew the Copter, attack for 5. And it's gonna do it. Alright, sweet. Got to pull off the Selfless Spirit Archangel Avacyn wombo combo.